Yes, I want to start streaming. But first, I got to put the headphones on so I can hear what's going on. Morning, folks. As they say. Should we do the dial-up modem? Sure, why not? Hello.
Tony Caravan. You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, and not what you don't.
Not what you don't. Yeah, today's show. So what? It's August 9th, 2021. Another week goes by. That's the title of the show. And I just chatted a thing that said, so what? All right. My title card today, which I need to update. There's always something I forget. Always something I forget. Title card today looks something like this. Just another day. Question mark? Morning show. Talk about that in a little bit. In the meantime, let's do some of the things that, well.
Hello. 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 Hello.
Hello. I'm uncomfortable. I'm really uncomfortable. Really uncomfortable. I'm trying to show this mug every day. It gets more difficult. The space I have here is cramped. That's why my head is so big in the monitor. You know? Because I really need more desk space. But I can't get around to doing that.
Quality, quantity, and variety.
Rock Flux.
Let's get this show on the road.
Just like old-time radio, it sounds like, doesn't it? Old-time radio.
Your papers, please.
Except for your papers, please. Well, that could be old-time radio. What's that on my face over here? No, over here. Almost looks like there's a mark, a blemish on my perfect skin. It's one of the things about me that's different than most people. That I am near perfection. Work hard at that. That must be an anomaly. Must have just popped up from cereal. Allergic to something. As some people call it housekeeping, I call it just tying up loose ends. You know, yesterday we were talking about the CompuGraphic and the early days of computing. Well, this goes before the CompuGraphic. This is a key punch card. And you're used to each one of these represents one line of code. You poor unfortunates. I have no idea what this is, do you? Yep, used to stack these in, and that's how you ran a program. They would like load in, like you never see those copy machines where you can put a whole stack of things in at once and it just copies the whole set. Well, I used to load these in a little bin like that, and each one of these was one line of code, and that's how you basically ran your program. Yeah, no, I'm not going to get a picture of it, but I just got up, man. I'm like tired. I just kept asking the old Alexa thing. I said it, but I don't know if the thing next door, the one I have in the bar room, doesn't get used anymore. If it's even listening to me, I don't know.
You have actually opened the door to another dimension?
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, It seems like that to me. But I kind of look awake, you know. So I guess I am. Kept asking you what time it was from like 1 o'clock, and then it would be 2 o'clock. Then it was like 3 o'clock. Then I finally just laid in bed. I was up. By the time I got into the old rostrum, it was like 4. And so I figured I'd start my show at 5 a.m. And it's 4:57 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I didn't really waste any time. 4:58, just clicked over, a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And here I am on August 8th, 2021. And as I say, I have no memory anymore. But it says, another week goes by. August 9th. Did I say 9th or 8th? 9th. It's Monday, August 9th, in the calendar year 2021. I got to watch myself. I got to keep track of my brain, make sure I stay on target. I do find myself after, talking 2 hours straight on these shows that I tend to, skip over a word. It's the same when you're typing something, when you're writing a book or something. The same type it's like verbal typos, I call them. I'm going to try to get into some kind of comfortable spot here. I have the same Hawaiian shirts on that I always wear, because it's warm down here. And, you got to stay warm. Cool. See, I'm just like totally out of it. I'm totally out of it. So with that said, let's look at the
Weather Watch forecast.
Here's the Weather Watch. The National Weather Service hasn't put up a they're a little bit late. They usually have it posted by like 4:30, but they're behind their times. But this is an August 9th, Monday, August 9th, forecast from NOAA. And this is showing storms. And the reason I'm not worried about having the one up that we had yesterday, if you're a regular viewer of this program, is because it basically showed that there were 90s pretty much everywhere except for in the desert where it was 100, and the extreme Pacific Northwest where it was going to be cooler. And I mean, you're in the middle of a frickin' forest. What do you expect? So it looks like rain. There's a good chance of rain. They have this dark green, which is rain likely, as opposed to rain chance. Okay. There's one blue means a snow chance. And dark blue means snow likely. I don't know if you can see that. Well, anyway, all that green you see pretty much in the Central Park Central Park. See, that's what I mean. You get up early, you just say these words. You've got to catch yourself. I'm trying to consciously catch myself. In the semi-central part of the country, but I mean central to the Great Lakes area, just on the edge of Ohio, working yourself west, into Indiana and parts, Missouri. People say these things. So it looks like there's a good chance of rain in that area going all the way up into Canada and pretty much down almost to Louisiana. Well, not Louisiana, but into Arkansas, Arkansas. Arkansas. Where's the W? Right? Ark and saw. Arkansas. Arkansas. It's like Arkansas. What it looks like to me. I've been to Arkansas. I remember years ago going there and going into one of these really... There's certain parts of the country that when you traveled... This is like 30 plus years ago, 35 years ago when I used to drive around the country. I'm sure things have changed drastically by now. Because everything is so homogenized. But, there used to be there were certain places you could go and they were like, they hadn't really changed from like the 50s, the 40s or the 50s, But I'm sure by now those places, this is like 35 years later, those places must have changed, right? I remember being in Arkansas one time and going into one of everything, in the South, a lot of things are just big. When you get to the Midwest and the South, like things are just larger. Like the streets, the central street. I remember being in, I don't know if it was Kansas. And Texas, it was like that too. There was places in Texas where like the center street was so wide. I mean, it was like, and I don't know if it was because, so people could, park tractors on both sides of the street or the parade, they had the parade there or something. But I mean like wide, like, like take a wide street, like an avenue, and then just imagine like making it even wider. And that's what it was like. I mean, across the street was like a long distance. You could definitely take a U-turn in this street without any difficulty. You could take a double U-turn. You could a figure eight. I remember going into a gas station in Arkansas, stopping in there to just get some gas, then going in to get something to drink, a cold drink or something too. And the pumps, you didn't even have to, you just pumped your gas. And it was like, I just went in to pay and the guy asked me how much did you, like they had it was no electronic thing or anything like that. And the gas pumps were pretty far distance. Like I say, everything was big distance from like the build, like the, where the guys were hanging out. There was like this Arkansas folk hanging in this place talking. So I gave them whatever it was for gas. And, and I looked over and and they had Coke machine, soda, and it was in the original Coke bottles. But it was, but it was fresh. I mean, it was new. Because, in those, I don't know if people understood that. And I don't know how they do things today. Because I think everything is like just-in-time delivery. Probably sodas, soft drinks, the same thing. But they used to have bottlers. That's what they used to call them. So it would be the Coca-Cola bottling company of, Poughkeepsie or something like that. The Pepsi-Cola bottling company of whatever. And so I guess the only thing that they would send in was like that last secret ingredient, like the Coke syrup or something. Like they used to give people the Coca-Cola syrup for upset stomachs or something like that. I don't know if you remember that. This goes way back. But I still remember that was my Arkansas memory. Arkansas memory of going in there and they were still, so their bottler, they still had a Coca-Cola bottling company apparently that had not switched over to the cans, right? Or anything modern. So it was those, if I can get my hand in the thing, it was those little classic Coke bottles that you had to open with like, let me just get this thing down. Jeez. That you had to like, flip open with the bottle opener on the red Coke machine that was flat not upright. And this is in like I don't know, getting towards the late 80s, I guess, because that's my California trips were like the late 80s. Because I hated California. Like I was, like being a moron, like people are today with ideologies. Oh, California, those people, screw them. Man, that coffee's getting warmer already. It's ridiculous. I'm going to move to the second morning show thing. If I could get this up here, like some religious artifact. I think this keeps it a little colder. Anyway, so that was a story there. So if you're down Arkansas way, yeah, it looks like you might be getting a touch of it, I think. That's Arkansas, yeah. And then up in the northern plains, hugging Canada. And it's funny how it looks as if suddenly in Canada it's not going to rain. But the reality is they just don't cover Canada. So that rain extends into Canada. So it looks like rain is likely in the extreme northern plain states, I guess, bordering with Canada. And then there's a chance of rain. It's interestingly enough, down on the border by Mexico, there's a chance of rain. And that was like forecast to be 100 degrees yesterday. Looks like Florida's getting a good bit of rain around the coastal areas. And then some of the Gulf states have a possibility of rain. And you could see intermixed. I don't know if you can or cannot. I can enlarge this a little bit. But you can see some little dark green areas amidst some of the green, particularly in the, Great Lakes area, just south of the Great Lakes. You can see a couple areas there where rain is likely. So I wish we had rain. I'm a little bit further. Well, I'm much further east than that. But anyway, that's your...
The Weather Watch forecast.
That's it, man. That's what it's looking like. In my neck of the woods, I guess I might as well take a look at that. It's currently 66 degrees outside my studio. And like I say, I'm in the mid-Atlantic states. And it looks like it's going to get sunny here up to 90 friggin' degrees. And tonight's going to be 72, which means that's not going to be a break. I had the window open last night. Didn't make a difference, I tried to explain this to people if you're interested. This isn't a weather show, by the way.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
I'm just getting this stuff out of the way. I'm explaining these little tidbits of things. That's why I do this thing. This is an educational program. It's a mad program from a madman. But for this entire week, Monday through Friday, it's basically going to be 90 degrees in my neck of the woods. And judging from the weather map that we had up yesterday, which I will put up, and all the nights are going to be like 70-ish. So you can see that there's not much rain expected. There's a chance of rain. But I'm going to get rid of that. All right? And I don't think we're going to talk about the Serapeum necessarily. Our daily image is that there are witches. There are witches. There are. And this garden picture, well, I'm not going to deal with that. So I'm just going to temporarily put up yesterday's image just so you know what I was talking about, and then I'll delete it. It's actually a semi-pain to do these things, but I do these things for you, even though I don't get compensated in any way, shape, or form for doing this. But this is the weather. This was the weather yesterday, Sunday. And so as you can see from this, you know, there are basically, it's 90s everywhere, right? So from the low to mid 90s, and the hundreds are in the deserts, and there's a few odd spots that are going to get some cooler weather up in the Pacific Northwest. So it's fairly probable, I should say, that, this is what we're going to see. It's just one of those things. It's the way it works. Probability. So no real rain unless you're in coastal areas in Florida, a couple of the Gulf states, or just south, or in the Great Lakes area and south. But I don't mean Great Lakes like in Lake Erie. Lake Erie looks like nothing's happening around there. But over Michigan, Indiana, and those ways. Okay? So once again, that was your
The Weather Watch forecast.
But yeah, this week's going to be pretty much a pressure cooker, as they say. I'm sure it's going to get up into, the mid-90s or more. It's going to be hot. Yesterday I was out for a while. It was mid-humidity or high humidity in the middle of the day. But I couldn't stay out and get any sun. I wanted to get some sun. But there are witches. There are. That's a line from Star Trek. There are witches. There are. There are witches. Scotty, do you remember that one? There are witches. There are. It's my next door neighbor. There are witches. There are. Next door neighbor was burning garbage. So it looks like some kind of like imp troll, Some kind of troll. Burning garbage. Right? Isn't that sick? And my nose was burning and my throat was burning. I mean, she puts the whole bag in. I think I might have mentioned this before, like plastic. She burns a box, like you get a box and you got that polystyrene and all that other kind. She just throws the whole thing in. This is my next door neighbor. I put up like an 8 or 10 foot fence in one area, which like totally freaks her out. Now, there's a war between us because I put this thing up, and it's like I can't block the smoke. I had to close every window in my house. Look at that thing. I mean, I don't like to make fun of people. But she's a fucking genuine goddamn fucking witch. That just scared somebody to fuck away. There are witches. There are. There are witches. There are. Burning fucking garbage. Ruined my fucking day. My yard is one of the few things. Sorry for saying fuck. I
took a vow of peace. And now you want me to help you kill all these men?
Yes, Padre.
I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, there are witches, there are. Maybe that person that tuned in and then tuned out was her. I don't know if she can figure this fucking shit out or not. But I know one thing.
This is insane. This is insane.
I know that. And that never gets old. So we were going to talk about, look again here, another work week begins, another work week, title card. Just another day, just another day. The morning show. Jelly beans. Jelly beans make you happy, even if you don't eat like jelly beans. It's like happy. They're like happy colors. Do you think so? You know, look at them. Jelly beans. I can't eat jelly beans with my teeth, man. Whoa. You know, I haven't taken a pain pill. In fact, let me see if I still... Did I get rid of those doctor things? Yeah, I think I moved them on. So I don't even know when I went to the ER before. Might have still been July. It's already the 9th of August. They're starting to go back to school already. I was talking to somebody on the phone, and I guess they're phasing in because of the thing. So they already, like, the first wave of students were, like, going into this dormitory near where this person I was talking to who cuts through campus to get somewhere, and was surprised to see all these, like, move-ins. I said that before, you know, despite all whatever nonsense is going on. When I was a kid, man, school was over by Memorial Day, and school didn't start till after Labor Day. It was like the day after Labor Day, and it was like, so from Memorial Day to Labor Day, you know, when I was a young child, before I actually understood holidays, dates, and specific solstice types of definitions, defining points of the various seasons when I was a child, I thought summer began on Memorial Day and summer was over on Labor Day. And as I grew up and got into radio, well, that's how it used to be. It used to be, you know, summer was Memorial Day to Labor Day. Memorial Day weekend was always the kickoff at all the resorts, particularly the shore resorts where I used to hang out. And Labor Day weekend is what was the last big weekend down at the shore. And then you went back to school. You know, because a lot of college kids, when I was in college, you went down and you worked the shore during the summer of your college. You know. Now these kids go back to first week of August, man. First weekend in August. And they're in school until in June. It's all parents, you know. See, I'm not holding back on anything, you know, my criticisms of things, you know, anymore. Because you know, the hell with it. It's my show, you know? Right?
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
You said it, sweetie. You know? It's like, so the parent, what do you have kids for? What are you having a kid for? You know, maternity leave. As soon as it's over, you put your kid in some kind of like infant care, you know, daycare for infants, right? Preschool, nursery school, preschool, whatever you want to call it. Then in the kindergarten, grade school, junior high, high school. The rich ones go to prep school. Then it's college. Graduate school. And then they do studies and test these people come out of high school and even some out of college, and they find that they're functionally illiterate. In other words, they have below average reading, writing, math, and science, right? Aptitudes. The whole purpose of basically school, right? Reading, writing, arithmetic, right? Well, they don't really need arithmetic because they got a smartphone. And they don't really need that learning, too much of that learning, because they could look it up on Wikipedia. Well, then what are you sending them to fucking school for? Right? They come out functionally illiterate, and your excuse is, well, they don't need to know how to, like, time, their multiplications or understand the square root or anything like that, because they could just use, their smartphone. The first calculators came out in like the 60s, late 60s. I mean, and they had the manual calculators that go way back. Adding machines, they used to call them. But, the pocket calculator started to surface. They were expensive, but by the 70s, they were pretty much, people had them. Kids who had richer parents bought them one. The first ones cost like $100. Now you can get the same one at the dollar, There's one that does exactly the same thing at the Dollar Tree for $1. But the point was, you still went to school and you still learned math, right? And there were always typewriters. And even word processors, word processors came along fairly early, right? Like I say, even the CompuGraphic machine I showed you here, which was mainly for printing and publishing purposes, but it was, if you look at it closely, for all practical purposes, it was a word processor that happened to have, be able to deal with different fonts and stuff like that. But it was used in the graphic arts industry. And, but you had people had word processors. So that didn't mean that they no longer knew how to write. Right. Reading, writing, arithmetic. And of course, science. Right. Like in that song. Thomas Dolby. Science. But the thing about it is, and I touched on this yesterday, but it's like, I guess it's going to be a theme for a little while. We've totally like shifted, the word paradigm shift. Some people don't like to hear that word because it's like everything else, if you use a word, if some moron uses a word, then it's, and it gets picked up by the media machine, then people think, oh, it's like cognitive dissonance. It gets overused by people who don't really understand or who probably have cognitive dissonance. It's the same with things like paradigm shift, Buzzwords, buzz phrases get picked up, and then they tend to lose their meaning or impact, the significance, the weight of using that phrase, or those two words together. They suddenly no longer have, carry any weight. It's like functionally illiterate, right? But yeah, that doesn't matter. I'll still use them. I don't care. The Doesn't really matter. And you should use them too. You know what I had yesterday? I had 2 hamburgers. I've had these hamburgers and rolls in the freezer for a long time. Not for a long, long time, but a fairly long time. I mean, at least a couple months. And I was worried about, because I thought, well, maybe somebody might visit me and I'll have, do a grilling of hamburgers and hot dogs. I got some Nathan kosher Franks in there and some hot dog rolls. I guess I might dig those out today or tomorrow. But I'm not going to cook them outside, go through that thing by myself. That'd be a pain. But I just microwaved. I literally nuked 2 frozen hamburgers, which I'm glad I did because what happened was all of the grease, and there was a lot of it, just all settled in this, Pyrex. You know what that is? That's glass that doesn't, you could put it microwave safe glass or oven safe glass. And the bottom was just coated. Well, not coated, it was just filled with it. So, and I have all these fresh tomatoes from my garden. So I chopped up some real thick tomato slices because I got so many tomatoes, I don't know what to do with them. I mean, so I'm eating, so much for trying to lose weight. It's I got food. And I don't normally eat things like hamburgers and stuff like that. I mean, I'm pretty much a healthy diet. But it's you got to eat this stuff. But anyway, all this grease just came out of it. So I just forked those out of that grease pile and put those on these nice Kaiser rolls, which I don't normally eat bread, on top of these thick tomato slices with some slices of onion. And then, of course, I put mustard and ketchup on to make the traditional hamburger, which I have not had in, I don't know, over a year, maybe longer. And I sat there and I made 2 of these things. And what happened was it ended up being lean and they were kind of thick. And they were cooked through. But there was no grease left in them. It was pretty tasty. I wouldn't say it was outrageously tasty though. It wasn't really super great. Probably because they were, all the grease had gone out of them, and it's the fat, that gives the flavor to these kinds of things, And I would say that they were almost well done, not, because I don't want to mess around with that. But that'll probably cause constipation because of the rolls or something. Things you got to deal with. But anyway, that's what I did yesterday, for those of you who are interested in that. But yeah, so I wake up, I'm thinking, okay, I was laying back in bed. I could have laid back in bed longer, indefinitely. I'm thinking about what I was going to talk about today. And then I just thought, it's just another day, the beginning of another work week for people who are wage slaves. People are going back to school now, or they're back on campus, or on their way, if they're phasing them back in. What kind of life is that, man? Half or a quarter of your life spent in some indoctrination center, being conditioned, right? Prepared for a life of propaganda and control and manipulation, right? Because if you're functionally illiterate when you come out, and that's according to the tests, right? You can't, if you've got poor reading, writing, and arithmetic and science skills, I mean, that's all there is. That's the world, right? But what are you going there for? I still say you only need about 6 years of school total. Yeah. And it's all a parents, it's a babysitting thing. This is a latter part of the 20th century, into the 21st century thing, right? Get rid of these jelly beans. Just another day. Because that's all it is to me. It's just another day, right? What does it really matter? But, you know, what do you need to know? You need to learn a skill, something to do in life. Now, if you want to be a scientist, right? I mean, if that's your goal, you want to study astrophysics, right? If you're somebody who's into computer science and you want to learn about computers, you know, oddly enough, I know all this stuff about AI and computers and code writing and all this stuff, and I didn't study any of that in college. You know, in fact, the only reason I have this is my roommate was a computer science major, and I used to go over sometimes on the weekend. He'd clown around in the computer because he had access to the computer room. And so I used to just go over there with him because he had a key. I think he had a key to get into the place. And so he'd be in there doing stuff, you know, because they had a couple of the experimental computers that actually had monitors on them, you know. But still there was a lot of this key punch crap was the primary stuff they were teaching the students. So he'd be in there doing something, writing, trying to write programs. That guy I lost touch with him after school, after college. But he was like a computer genius back when we were in college, so he must be a billionaire. I guess he's some billionaire now. I've never seen his name pop up, but then again, I don't keep track of everybody in Silicon Valley. But he's probably, you know, is worth $1 billion or hundreds of millions of dollars. Probably retired. Well, he's retired by now. Probably. Or if he would have made that much money too, he would have retired. He knew how, him and I, we used to go. He was a senior. I was older. I took a year or so off. So I was a junior when he was a senior. So we were both 21. So we used to go to the bars in town because, you know, and hang out. So he knew how, he knew how to have a good time. So we had some fun. But yeah, I didn't major in computer science or anything like that. So I was pretty much a self-taught coder. But I just basically every day, and actually I know another guy who's a multimillionaire now, way younger than I am. A friend of mine's son, who was, didn't, you know, basically didn't, I don't believe he went to college. And if he did, it was like, you know, maybe, I don't think he went to college. He's one of the best coders in the world, you know. And he's a multimillionaire. The thing about code, and especially in the early days, it's like anything when you get in on the so-called ground floor, the beginning of it, is that as the thing, if you're there when it begins and you're involved in it and you're doing it day in, day out, then as it grows, you know, you grow along with it and your knowledge grows with it. And if, like I say, in the early days of the internet, as they call it, and coding and things of that nature, it was a very open system. You know, they call it open source now on certain programs and things. This program I'm using now, that I could do all these goofy things, like pull up thou, which is thou. This is an open source program, meaning that nobody owns it and people are contributing to it. So that you find a bug, you fix a bug, or someone reports a bug and other people try to fix the bug, that kind of stuff. But in the early days of the internet, the whole thing was like that. So just even, basic server code, and of course HTML, which is joke code, HTML you basically can write with a text, some text program. So if you have some text edit program, I know both Windows and Macs have them. Like the most simplistic program in the world. It's just like text. And all you have to do is basically know the setup, the head, body, whatever. And then you could add in things like what they call meta tags and, stuff like that. I was going to do a basic course. Not even a course. I was just like in the middle of one of my shows. I was going to demonstrate how to make how to build a website from code. Because the problem is today is that you don't have the ability. Everything's, for the most part, I should say. Exceptions to every rule. But most things are templates, right? Or the work's done for you. So, if you're not some business that hires goes to Wix or one of these goofy things, it's like WordPress. And you either have the free WordPress and you choose from their free templates, right? Or you pay X amount a month, right? And if you want to sell something, you go to Shopify. And everybody's got everything now. Google has websites. It's just... And so, but I'm pretty sure, I think on Google you can embed. And what I was going to do, and I'm still thinking about doing it, but I'll probably test it out first. I was going to see if I could take a blank page in one of these sites. Because a lot of times when they offer you a template, they sometimes give you the option to embed code. Not all of them. Some of them, it's just not, that's like throwing a wrench in the machine or something. But I was thinking if it was possible to purely get a blank page and embed the entire page. So in effect, you can utilize one of these services and then create an HTML web page. And you would say, well, why would you want to do something like that? Because you have more control over it. You can do things. You don't have to conform to the template. The template isn't enough. That's why all the websites kind of look the same today. It's like even the TonyCaravanLive.com, I just needed a place where I could have links to my shirts and mugs and things like that. So I just put the stuff on that page. And I haven't gotten in. That's why I keep trying to tell you. I don't have the time to build out some rockflux.com site to, show you and demonstrate, the end of the world as we know it. In fact, who knows, by the time I get that up, it might have already happened, or the grid will have gone down, so it'll be meaningless. All this stuff is meaningless if the grid goes down. Nobody thinks about that. I can't believe that there's such a high probability of a grid down situation that's like looming out there, and how hidden that is from the general public. Like the media just won't even talk about it. And apart from a couple of people, and I've mentioned them, guys like Ben Davidson at Suspicious Observers, or Doug Vogt. Apart from literally a couple people that anyone else talking about anything even closely resembling what I'm discussing are just like wackos. It's the same with like the prepping movement versus people who are, prepared. Preppers got these sacks of rice and beans and reconnection successful. That time you would have experienced there was a 0 kilobytes per second. So somebody screwed with me. It's funny when you talk about this stuff. I mean, is it a coincidence? I mean, there are no coincidences, right? I swear when I get into this. But anyway, like I was talking about it. So you get these people that's like, do you really want, it's like the idea is, or MREs. Do you really want to like live on MREs? I mean, I guess given the choice of starvation or not, right? But the idea is that what you want to do is, in a situation, the idea of preparation, right? Self-sufficiency, right? Self-reliance and all those type of things. It's not, because of these crazies that come up with these absurd scenarios. It's basically because what happens if the ice, builds up in this winter on the power lines in your area and you're without power for a week or two, right? That's why you want to have the thing I have back here, that like Jackery thing. That's what my great solar stuff is about. It's not about preparing for the end of the world, right? When these things happen, in an end of the world scenario, one of these civilization things, you're talking about centuries to 1,000 years before it's going to recover. So it doesn't matter. These people say, have at least 90 days, 6 months, a year's worth of food. Well, good. You're going to die, after the year, right? We're talking about everything being frozen planet, ice planet, for centuries, at least 4 centuries and stuff like that. Crazy. So you're not going to be planting crops. You're not going to be living underground. There's going to be constant earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, ice planet. So, the prepping thing is really kind of an exercise in futility. It's a waste of time. What you want to do is prepare for, things that could happen, such as storms, right? Natural disasters, just things in general. Like I say, the power goes out here sometimes. I mean, it's hard to believe in the 21st century, right? But I don't know how many times a year the power goes out for several hours or more. And I'm not alone in this. I talk to people who live in other areas, like, other major, decent areas. And there's like power outages. California, they do it intentionally. They have brownouts and like rolling blackouts and stuff. Well, you should be prepared for that stuff by having, one of these things. Go to my, great solar stuff site, TonyCaravanLive.com. Click on the link. Have a thing. So your life can go on during those hours or days or weeks that the power's out. This is that's we live in a society that's dependent upon this sort of thing, right? It's the same as I always say, it's a carbon-based society. You can't have a Green New Deal, right? 0.004 CO2 isn't doing anything to this planet. Man isn't just doing anything here. I mean, the Chinese are, right? I mean, they're spewing. Have you seen? They've reactivated all these major coal plants, so they're spewing all kinds of carbon into the atmosphere right now. They're probably spewing more in 1 week than the U.S. output in a year. You see? But it's always a focus on the U.S. Do you ever notice that? Yet we have these Energy Star appliances. We have all these like filtration systems. We have clean air, clean water, right? Filters on everything. HVAC filters on our buildings. Our plants are required to do this. You know, there's all these stringent requirements. And it's like these countries and we only have 300 million people. Well, they have 1,300,000,000. So they have 1 billion more people than us. And they're spewing out like, you know, more than a year or who knows, years worth what we do. And no one ever criticizes them. So do you understand the absurdity of that whole thing? I mean, they were the ones who actually created this whole thing that you can't speak of, and like nobody's pointing to them like, oh yeah, right? Instead, it's like this chair fell down again. It's like if we don't do a thing, we're the problem. So it's pretty whacked out. But yeah, I'm tired today. I don't know why I didn't do anything. I mean, I did eat those hamburgers yesterday. Didn't exercise. I got some friend I'm supposed to help out this morning. Not for a while, not for a couple hours. I'm going to have to take a nap after the show. Or something. Tried. Excuse me. I'm out of my cat's favorite food. This is like the food that the cat likes now. Picnic Crunch. And I'm out of it. They don't have it at the local supermarket. So what am I supposed to do for breakfast for him tomorrow? Those are the kind of things I worry about. But like I was saying, it's like people don't need to go to more than 6 years of school unless you're going to be a doctor or some kind of specific, study of science. Right? You just need to know how to do a thing so that you can get along in society and you can be happy. Find happiness. And it doesn't matter what that thing is. Right? People put this idea like, well, if you want to get a good paying job, you need a degree. Well, that's been proven false, over the past, I don't know how many years. There's millions and millions of people out there with degrees and are all unemployed. And it's not just because of last year. It's like been for a long time coming. Because these degrees, the colleges just turned into money-making machines. For, both the banks and, the boards of trustees and people like that, profited off of the education system, right? The institution, right? So, and the amount of money that you need is all relative to your existence, right? So that's where this brainwashing, conditioning thing comes in. So they condition, it's like, you got to feel sorry for guys, young guys, right? Because they condition the women that the women have to have this big house and shiny car and all that stuff, right? And, you know, even though today's society, even though in reality the women today don't, you know, are in their own freaking world, right? But I mean, it's still they're conditioned that way. So, and the guys are conditioned that they think they have to, in order to get themselves a good wife or a good girlfriend or whatever, or just to get laid, they have to be some man of means. But in reality, is this society doesn't need degreed people. There's not that big a need for it, right? So you have to look at what they call the micro and macro, like, world. Okay. And so the micro would be a city, a town. The macro would be a country, right? Look at it that way. A state, maybe. A state or a country, right? Not even the world, because the world is incomprehensible to the average person. And to pretend that you can comprehend our planet is foolhardy. That's why the whole idea of this CO2 and man-made CO2 is so insane, especially when kids and these politicians and people talk about it, because they have no idea of the magnitude, like, of the planet, the ecosystem, how things work. They don't know that China's spewing out all this stuff. They don't know what's going on in India. They don't know what's going on in parts of Africa, South America, Southeast Asia, right? They have no idea. They have no clue. They've never been taught that. They don't know. They've never been there, right? You know, they don't know, but they talk CO2. And it's so what's it always targeted at? The U.S. must become, must reduce its emissions. And it's like, or the U.K. It's like they push the blame on on places that the only places they know. And they have no idea that these places that they're blaming are the least polluters and emitters of anything on the planet, and are the smallest population. The U.S. is like something like less than 5% of the world population. It's probably only about 4% now, because, I mean, when you think about population growth, because population growth almost becomes exponential at certain points. I mean, we're up to 8 billion people on the planet almost. And so when you have 100, when you've got 1 billion people in China, 1 billion plus people in China, and 1 billion plus people in India, and 1 billion plus people in Southeast Asia, right? You start adding up these billions of people, right? Well, it doesn't matter what, excuse me, whether or not they've got like restrictions on how many children they can have or not. If they only had one child, right? If 1 billion people had one child, that would be 1 billion new people. As opposed to if 300 million had one child, that would only be 300 million. So, nobody can keep records of this, right? This is what I'm trying to say. The macro doesn't matter. And that's the absurdity of the people, the Paris Accords and the UN and all of this Green New Deal nonsense. They targeted at our country and a few other former Western civilization countries because they're the only places they know, and the only places that are or were somewhat civilized enough and to have actually collected data. All right. But they don't have data on all these other areas. So they make these guesstimates. So it's estimated that the world population is close to 8 billion people right now. Who knows, right? You know, and there's people that sit around, but they don't know. They really don't know. They don't know how many people are being born right now in some small African village. They don't know how many people are being born in some mountain town in Peru. They don't know that. They don't know how many people are being born right now in Indonesia, right? They don't really know that. They're guesstimates. And so this is what I'm talking about, the macro and micro. And so when you look at, you know, this has to get back into this why education is just an indoctrination system. It's a conditioning system to control people. Because if you look in the micro, meaning your town, borough, or city, whatever, okay? I'm having problems with YouTube right now. We're getting these spinning things and cutouts. So just hang with us. Hopefully everything will be fine. I have no idea. My CPU is doing fine. I'm pushing out 30 frames per second, and my kilobytes per second are high, but YouTube, they don't want this information out, even though there's nobody even listening. Because this is like so truthful. They're afraid maybe somebody might get it and pick it up and a news guy might run with it. Okay, so in this micro concept, micro universe, and I don't mean the universe, I mean the micro universe of your town, your city, borough, all right, township. How many plumbers do you need? Right? Think about it. How many electricians do you need? How many teachers do you need? Right? So what you do is, if you want to figure something out, you look at the micro first. Right? This is why they've never come up. This is the problem that they have with the theory of everything. I don't want to get into that stuff, you know, but it's like guys like me that have that stuff figured out. But these guys who overthink it, they don't realize it. You look at the micro first. Instead of they approach the macro. And then they wonder why they can't come up with some sort of figure out the micro from the macro. Because it doesn't work that way. The secret, the figuring goes on from the micro. And then you build it up. That's how it works. Right? That's how everything works. That's how life works. Life begins with cells. Right? You know, human life, right? Cells split, right? And and basically grow into a human being. You know, that's it. And people have to look at that. So anyway, so let's get back to this micro, this town. So you have a school. So there's so many jobs for teachers because because of the population of that town. And so if you have an extra teacher, well, maybe they could get a part-time job as a waitress and be a substitute teacher. But beyond that, okay, let's go to the waitress. There's so many restaurants. And so there's so many jobs as a waitress or waiter. Waiter. ER. Right? How many bartenders? Right? Cab drivers or Uber drivers or Lyft drivers, whatever you want to call it. Think about that. The micro. That's what you call the micro. So within a town, there's a set finite amount of things for people to do. And if you happen to be a teacher and all the teaching positions are filled and no one currently teaching is going to be retiring within the next several years or 5 years, 10 years, you either have to find another profession or you have to go to a town somewhere where they need a teacher. Okay? That's the same in the construction trade. If in your town there's a couple contracting companies, right? And there's a certain amount of demand for, say, a handyman, all right? And you're a guy with a tool belt, right? Well, if none of the local contractors are hiring and there's nobody putting ads in or on these social sites saying, hey, I need a handyman, well, then you're going to have to move to the next town or somewhere else where they need one, or you're going to have to do something different. Same with a plumber, right? You know, if you're trained as an accountant and there are X amount of businesses in your town, borough, city, whatever, and the big accounting firms are full, not hiring, and there don't seem to be any ads and companies, and you're going around and sending resumes out and nobody's hiring an accountant, well, then you have to go somewhere where they need an accountant. And the list goes on and on and on. You can apply this to anything. So that's the micro, right? And so what happened in the U.S. is that they didn't pay attention. And believe me, I'm not going to get into the science aspect of this, but like Einstein, physicists, astrophysicists, biologists, people like that, they don't pay attention to, they don't start with the micro either. They start with the macro. And so what happened in the U.S., the Department of Education, the bureaucracy, the government, right? The big macro, right? Bureaucracy makes these decisions, or statewide, these college institutions decide we're going to have, degree, we're offering, degrees in some kind of social issues, right? Environmental studies, right? Degree in some kind of thing. But they neglect to tell you that there's no use for that in your town. And perhaps in the entire state, there's maybe only a couple of bureaucratic positions that are basically political because people have some kind of agenda. There's always some money behind it. So so there might be 5 jobs, in the state capital that they'll hire some people like that so they can support and create reports to support their edicts that inevitably involve taxing and restricting businesses and collecting something, this, that, the other. Man, it's hotter than hell in here. So, do you understand that? And so that's why I say people don't need to go to school for more than 6 years. And really all you need to do is learn a trade, how to survive, how to live. And this idea that you have to have, some kind of cookie cutter house and keep developing creating rectangular aluminum sided homes in developments with lawns where they have a sit down lawnmower. So on the weekend, you can do that thing wherever it is. and this becomes the better part of your weekend, for four or more months out of the year. I mean, give me a break. And that's why you have millions and millions of jobs available right now and no one to fill them. Because there are certain jobs that there are a need for, but that most people went to college and got jobs that there are no need for because they never looked at the micro. They only looked at the macro, and they only looked at making money. So the colleges just wanted to raise tuitions so they can enrich themselves, all the people who make money on colleges. And there's a whole line of, various subsets of people who've got their claws in on that to get that money. And of course, the banks that, create the loans and one way or another get their money, because even if they talk about like, we're going to forgive student loans, it's not student loan forgiveness. The money comes from somebody's going to give the money to the banker. The banker always gets their money. The banker never forgives. You see, the banker gets their money. It's just how they get it from the government. And that's why we have a corporatocracy, because the corporatocracy always gets their money. That's why the corporatocracy exists. Corporations exist. It's their basic bylaws exist to enrich their shareholders. That's like the main reason of a corporation, right? That's the whole idea. There's nothing wrong with that. That's capitalism. And so we have a corporatocracy, which is not capitalism. It's crony capitalism. It's basically government. It's a bureaucracy. It's totalitarian state is what we have now. So, why are you wasting 20 some odd years in school? And why are parents dumping their kids off? As infants. Toddlers, little kids. What are they learning? They're learning nothing. Because when they get out of grade school, high school, and like I say, in many cases college, testing is showing that they're functionally illiterate. And they have, basically, poor math, science, reading, writing skills. So the school did nothing all those years. Like I say, depending on how long a person lives, half to a third of their life. A lot of people in this country only die in their 50s. I mean, because of the poisoning. When they say average age, life expectancy is like 77 now or something like that. How many people do you know? You see a lot of people living to be 90, okay? Those are the old timers, who didn't grow up on processed food and stuff like that. So, to average something out, if you go from 50 to 70, or 90 to 70, or whatever, you see what I mean? It averages out to 70, right? But if you go like 57, right, you see, understand how the logic there. Or if you're functionally illiterate, you can't do that little basic math in your mind. But approximately, so when they say the average life expectancy is 77, that doesn't mean you're going to live to be 77. No, that means that there's a lot of people that prior to all of this culture of like putting people on all these crazy ass drugs, all this processed food, GMOs, all the stress, right? These are people who retired at age 62 or 65 30 years ago. Somebody who's 92 retired 30 years ago. Think about that, right? If somebody lives to be 95, they retired 30 years ago. They're 95. So they've been stress-free. They've had, they're just living. And, that generation are the ones that bought a house for $19,000 or $20,000 and sold it for $200,000, right? And had made money and like are living somewhere in Florida, and they're just like, they got money in the bank. So that's an anomaly that people aren't paying attention to. Like I say, people don't look at reality, and they don't look at the micro macro world, and they also don't look at reality. So when I say people spend 20 some years, those that go get these ridiculous degrees in college that have no purpose. Well, if you consider the foods they're eating, the stress they have in their lives and all that nonsense, these people are dying of heart attacks. The obesity, diabetes, right? All of these diseases. Heart attack, okay. Reconnection successful. All right. YouTube is playing games with me today. Man, I was on a good roll there. In case you didn't see this, all right, I'm having problems with my upload right now. Come on. Hang in there. Hang in there. Hang in there, folks. YouTube is not receiving enough video. Okay, we're back. My CPU has gone up. All right, what I was talking about, it was very annoying. I must have really hit a nerve. What I was explaining, if some of this is repetitive, because I'm not exactly sure when everything went out. Okay? So now I've got to look down at these numbers and keep an eye on this. What I was trying to explain is that if you go to school for more than 6 years, you're basically just wasting your time. Because most people, what I was saying is that most people die in their 50s. Okay, now. It's not 77 isn't the life expectancy in the U.S. That life expectancy is based on the fact that people born prior to, all right, people who retired 30 years ago or 20 some years ago, prior to all of the cancer-causing things, foods, the processed foods, the GMOs, the stress of life, right? The madness. And those people have lived to be in their high 80s and 90s. So that skews the mortality rate. So the idea, they're saying the average person will live to be 77, but that's not true. Because once that generation dies off, the real thing is people are only living to be in their 50s and 60s in the U.S. now. And as we get and as time passes, it's more like 50. So you go to school for 20 years and you get some degree in like such and such studies, environmental studies. Excuse me. There's no use for that job. Okay? And so you've spent half your life, literally half your life, because you're going to die in your 50s. The odds are, you see, of a heart attack, stroke, diabetes, type 2 diabetes, cancer. There's a whole list. You can just go to cdc.gov and look at causes of death. We've posted it on these shows many times. And so like I was saying, 6 million people every decade, every 10 years die of cancer. 6.5 million people every 10 years die of heart disease. But when you tally in, the other causes of death, diabetes and, strokes and all these various other diseases, preventable diseases, there's millions of people who die every year. So so you're talking about 10 million people dying in a decade, since, like I said, since probably 2001, 2000, this century, 20 some million people may have died of preventable deaths. 20 million. Forget about this thing you can't talk about. All right. And so people are going to school just for the sake because these bureaucrats want to make money. It's either the bankers or it's the people who are all have their claws into these universities and these university towns. And so I was talking about the micro versus the macro and how you solve these problems. And think about something. There are only a limited amount of people in a small community, even a big city, that there's a need for a specific profession, a specific, job. And if that city doesn't have a need for, there's only so many teachers they need. There's only so many plumbers they need. There's only so many people research scientists in genetics that they need. Okay, whatever. So many carpenters. And so you are going to be unemployed. And so what the school system isn't doing is it's not focusing, the education system is focusing on indoctrination, conditioning, and programming your biological brain, basically, your subconscious. So it has nothing to do with your consciousness and creativity, right? And what they're focusing on is just making money and then controlling you. And then basically trying to shorten your lifespan the best they can because they don't want to pay out. Right? They don't want you around. They don't need you anymore. And that's why going forward, assuming we don't have this cataclysm that seems to occur every 12,000 years that we're in the middle of right now, that assuming that doesn't happen, right? That the likelihood of you living beyond, your 50s or early 60s is very minimal. Because you've basically been eating processed foods, exposed to all kinds of cancer-causing agents. You've been under a tremendous amount of stress. All of these things that lead to the leading causes of death, according to the CDC, .gov, these are the leading causes of death in the U.S. Heart disease, cancer, right? Strokes, diabetes, and other complications, of bad diets and things of that nature. And stress. Stress kills. That's the biggest killer. So I say most people only need to go to school for about 6 years. So parents, and so what are these parents doing? So they're using the school system. They're just throwing off these toddlers into daycare, infant care, toddler care, preschool, right? Kindergarten to junior high, into high school, and then into college. So they have to deal with them. I love my kids. And if you loved your kids, you wouldn't be sending them off. Well, yeah, but I got to provide. I got to have my job, my career. No, you got to have your SUV and your rectangular home in that development so that your hubby can ride his frickin' lawnmower on the weekends and wave to the other guys across the street on their sit-down mowers with your 3-car garages. That's why you're sending your kids off. Mommy, Mommy, why are you leaving me? Mommy, Mommy, don't go. Yeah, think about it. Think what's going on in a child's mind, right? When you, after maternity leave, when they send them to, right? Think what's going on in a child's mind. You don't want to. And what are they learning if the testing is showing that they're functionally illiterate and they have no skills? But they know how to use apps. I remember when these stupid things first came out, right? I'd hear people say, "Oh, that my grandchild's really smart. You should see what they could do with their little computer or their little thing." Yeah, right. Any kid, any infant can work a frickin' app. It's like these adults. Hey, look at the website I built. Yeah, from a template. Hey, look at the flyer I made. Yeah, from a template. You dragged and dropped a photo and you replaced that headline with your headline. Congratulations. You copy and pasted text. Hey, look at the brochure I made for the company. It looks to me like something I've seen 1,000 times before. It's a template. So people have no idea. So it's another work week. People are going to work, abandoning their kids. The kids are basically just being warped more and more every year. More and more every year. All they're doing is teaching them it's pure brainwashing at this point. They're not teaching them any skills whatsoever. And when they do teach anything, it's like how to pass the test so that the school system gets the money from the state and the federal government. I mean, these are the realities that are not spoken. They go unspoken. And that's why you have a dysfunctional society, and that's why you have people in charge who are basically morons now. Okay? People don't like to hear that word either. You know, bureaucrats, they're morons. They don't know anything. They don't know what they're talking about. They're not intelligent people. And all the intelligent people who are in the sciences, right? They're so caught up in their work, but you know, it's a useless effort. It's really sad. You know, sometimes I'll watch these discussions by these physicists, astrophysicists, people working on cutting edge stuff like AI and different things like that. And it's, and they're such brilliant minds, right? And they're working to solve these hard problems. And discussions are very interesting, and it's great to just follow their minds and see how the thought patterns that go on and what they're doing. But the takeaway from when you see these discussions, and they're usually long form discussions, which I like, which is like my show. It's a long form discussion. It takes you time to get to a place. Sometimes you have to go through various, levels until you can come to a conclusion or get somewhere. And I watch this stuff and I think, man, they're wasting their time. Because 250 million people in this country don't even care, don't even understand what they're talking about. Maybe 300 million don't. If we have 330 million people in this country, maybe 300 plus million people don't even know what these people are talking about. And that's like being generous. I would almost maybe say if we have 330 million people in this country, maybe 329 million people don't know what these people are talking about. Right? And so all these promises, right, that are being made of this future, it's like the flying cars of the 60s, right? All these promises that are being made again, they're never going to come true. They're just false, empty promises. They're never going to fix the infrastructure. It's too late for that. How are they going to do it? Who's going to do it? There's nobody to do it. Nobody's trained to do it. There's not enough people trained to do it. It's a big country, right? There's a lot of bridges, a lot of miles of highways. There's a lot of airports, right? There's a lot of rail lines. Who's going to do this stuff? There's only so many, there's a handful of big contracting firms, like I said, which will get some key projects in some high visibility cities, right? That have to do, that are more politically connected than actually affect, populations in need. But that's it. And then some of these other projects are projects that would take decades to complete. And by then, forget it. You'd be outdated. I told you, it's like the Department of Transportation in most states will tell you. They start at one side, unless it's a microscopic state, one of these small states like Delaware or something. But the average state, they start fixing highways and bridges at one side of the state. And by the time they get across the state, up and down, north and south, and west, when they get to the west, they have to start all over again in the east because it's taken a decade or so to get that far. And what they did a decade prior is all fallen apart or is in need of repair or maintenance, etc. So, yeah, you're not, we'd be lucky if we could just hold, shore up some of the bridges, right? And fix some of the potholes. That's your $3 trillion infrastructure project. And I don't know where you're going to find people that know how to work heavy equipment, who are trained in heavy equipment, when you've got tens of millions of people unemployed and tens of millions of jobs available and nobody wants to take them because they're either unqualified or they don't want to do it. And you got more and more mechanization, algorithms, and AI dealing with things, just doing jobs, silly human jobs. Jobs that humans used to sit in work carols or, cubicles to do. They're just unnecessary anymore. People don't get any of that stuff, and it's sad. And that's why I say, here, it's another week, right? What's the title card here? The jelly beans. Just another day, right? Another day where people are going to, friends of mine, people I don't know are going to watch these news, media, and YouTube things and get caught up in all this hogwash that is meaningless. Meaningless. Save what? Build back what? Reset what? Then what? I have a t-shirt. Then what? All right, with a question mark. Then what? Nobody bought it, of course. I bought one. Then what? Right? Paradise? Utopia? Heaven on earth? I mean, come on, be real. What? Your life is going to get better? Then what? It's like the Green New Deal. Then what? Okay, you're going to get rid of all we have a carbon-based society, all right? So you're going to get rid of that so nobody can fly in a plane, nobody can drive a car, and you can't use any heavy equipment to fix the infrastructure. Then what? You win? You have a party somewhere? Or on the opposite side, okay, drain the swamp. Okay, close down the CIA, the NSA, the DIA, right? The FBI. Then what? Then what? Right? It's a bureaucracy. It's a fucking ecosystem, man. You don't get it. You start at the micro and you build to the macro. You look at the macro and say, "Oh, we're going to change the macro." It's all about the micro, okay? That's how things work. So, people just deal with your own, basically your own house first. Your life. Are you happy in your own life? Are you happy with your wife? Are you happy with your husband? Are you happy with your children? Do you have your house in order first? Now, how's your neighborhood? All right? All right? How's the neighborhood next to you? And then how's your little community? Right? You know, whatever group you're involved in. How's your church group? How's your coworkers? And what's your little town, borough, or city like? That's life. This macro thing, this national news, this media machine and social media and YouTube, right? What does that have to do with your life? And how are any of these people going to change your life? They're not. It's a corporatocracy, man. Get it through your thick skulls. All right? Corporatocracy just wants to make money. There's two things a corporatocracy wants to do. And these people on a global scale. They want to, A, maintain their billions of dollars, in wealth so that they can maintain their lifestyles. And then there's a percentage of them that are psychopaths that just get off on tormenting people. Power. They're on power trips. But a power trip is basically somebody that wants to interfere with your life. Right? That wants to mess with you. Because what else is a power trip? A ruler. Right? What does a ruler do? Right? Take care of you? No. They want to mess with you. They're psychopaths. All right? And that's it. That's the world. That's the macro world. A corporatocracy, right? Of psychopaths and billionaires. That's who rules the world. That's the Davos set. That's the World Economic Forum. All right? So what are you fucking talking about? What are you into? What do you think you're going to change, build back better, or what are you going to save America from? Right? From what? Nothing. Politics doesn't exist. They're all marionettes. It's all a cult of personality. Remember, I'm sorry to say this, but people just can't get this through their head. The last president was no different than the current president. Oh, they're bringing the country to turn it into a socialist. This country will never be a communist country. It has nothing to do with communism, socialism, or anything. It's totalitarianism, and it always has been, and the leaders are just puppets. The last guy didn't do anything. Hey, look, I gave the guy the benefit of the doubt for a while. Didn't do anything. I'm sorry, guys. Well, he helped the VA. Yeah. Well, that was bound to happen anyway. It had to happen. All right. That was the military-industrial complex did that. All right. They've got to please, that was the DIA. That was the bureaucracy that did that. You could pretend all you want that it was directed by that, but no. That was basically the military-industrial complex saying, look, you better take care of these people or we're not going to be able to make any money on our future wars. If we don't take care of our vets, and if the vets if in other words, if the military abandons the military, we lose those billions of dollars we make on military contracts. So that's the only thing. Build a wall. No. That doesn't need, none of that stuff even fucking matters, man. None of that stuff even fucking matters. There is no Constitution. The Constitution giveth, the terms of service taketh away. Everything that's happened and will happen is all preordained, man. It's just the corporatocracy does what it wants to do and lets things happen that it wants to happen. All right? Okay? People just don't get it, man. They just don't get it. And the stuff I'm telling you will never happen. People should go to school for 6 years unless you want to be a doctor. Well, technically a doctor, you only need to go to school for 6, You should just go right to medical school when you're of a certain age. So maybe you go to 8 years of school. 2 years of, when you're a kid, basic 3 R's. And then go into, like, what was that, Doogie Howser, right? Was like a high school, these people that go into medical school or go into college when they're in high school type of people. I mean, that's basically it. Otherwise, learn a trade, right? I mean, that's what life's all about. Everything else is just a big game because you want to have all this stuff. I'm retired. I don't care. Like I said.
I've resigned. I will not be pushed, filed, stamped, indexed, briefed, debriefed, or numbered.
Yeah, screw that, man. Hydrate yourself. So, yeah, I don't know. It's very hot in this place today. I don't know why I do know why YouTube screwed with me because I have to watch the playback to see what exactly they cut out. But for the most part, what I basically laid on you today is like, is fucking incredible, So take it with a grain of sand because I know that's how it is. People just don't listen. They just don't listen. They don't care. Nothing's going to change, too, by the way. And more than likely, this whole thing's going to end in a big ice storm anyway. The conveyor's really, really starting to slow down big time in the Atlantic. All right? So things are going to start freezing over, not heating up. And, the magnetic field is just, it's just getting weaker by the day. And none of this has anything to do with 0.004 CO2. And no president, right? No Congress or senators, no political cardboard candidates, puppets are going to, change that. You don't mess with Mother Nature. Remember the old butter commercial? All right? The earth is fine. You can't save the planet. You need to save yourself. The planet is going to be here after you're dead. All right? The planet will be here after the next cataclysm. The planet was here after the Great Flood. Okay? And the planet will be here after the next big flood freeze. Okay? The natural state of this planet is an ice age. We're in an interglacial period right now. It's about to end. You maniacs. You just don't get it. Because you don't know anything. You were never taught. It's not your fault. All right? But why don't you learn something? Turn off the fucking internet, and if you got a library, try to go there and see if you have a library that still has some books and read some books. The internet's full of bullshit. Wikipedia is crap, man. It's lies. It's revisionist history, just like school systems are. Teachers are no longer anyone to be admired. I'm sorry about that. All right? Teachers are part of a teachers union that does the bidding of the administration, and all they're worried about is holding, is working the line, holding the line so that they can retire and get their pension. All right? And all the administrators want is to keep getting the federal and state funding. So they pressure the teachers to prompt the students to pass these unbelievable tests to keep that money coming in. And now they're making, and then of course now they're tormenting kids by making them, basically ruining their health. So get with it, man. Don't you get it? The nanny state is raising people, and the mortality rate is in the 50s and 60s now. Because those older people, like I say, they grew up on like regular food and less stress. And the older they are, the longer they've been retired, which means they've had no stress on themselves. Right? They've just been living. You don't get that, do you? The life expectancy of people today, well, technically most people only have the maximum amount 20 years before probably the sun novas. But assuming that doesn't happen, the life expectancy of the average person today is like, right, is late 50s, 60s. I mean, that's the real number. Anyway.
Good morning.
Good morning, you maniacs. Why don't you go to TonyCaravanLive.com and buy something? All right? I'm so tired of people believing in bullshit. All right? Yeah. Don't insult your listeners. I don't give a shit. Go to Rockflux, Tony Caravan Live. It's the same website for right now. Right? Great solar stuff. I do these things for free. I don't make any money. All right? I'm not monetized. Get yourself something. I'm trying to help you and like wake you up. And you think sitting here and like talking to you like a baby is going to wake you up? No. Anyway. Have a nice day. Have a nice work week. And, your poor kids that you just left off at, handed over to the nanny state. Think about that.